It was an era of people just being really frightened.
A story of murder, racism, and greed coming to the silver screen. The years of work that went into making this true story into a major motion picture, and what it means to descendants to see their family's story being told. We'll also take you inside the Los Angeles red carpet premiere. We'll explore that and much more in History on the Big Screen, the making of Killers of the Flower Moon. Welcome to History on the Big Screen, the making of Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm Ron Terrell. I'm here in Pawhuska, where legendary director Martin Scorsese shot part of his highly anticipated film. It's based on the David Grann book about the Reign of Terror in Osage County. We told you when the movie and its star-studded cast featuring Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone was announced back in 2019. While COVID delayed the start of filming, crews arrived in Green Country in 2021 and made this Osage County town almost unrecognizable. Old Ford Model Ts drove down a dirt road. Replicas of old filling stations and barbershops created the facade of a bustling business district, all to tell this story about what happened a century ago.
Osage County in general was nuts.
If you lived on the Osage Reservation in the 1920s, you were sitting on top of more oil than you knew what to do with, leading to many tribal citizens becoming extremely wealthy. The traces of that fortune can still be seen in downtown Fairfax. The streets are extra wide for all those luxurious cars, and beautifully constructed shops and churches add to the glory.
And then people got greedy.
Oh, really? No, that's the first time I've ever heard of that, but...
We talked with the Fairfax chief editor, Carol Connor. She spent years researching the Osage murders. She says specifically Texas-bred banker William Hale became money hungry. Hale figured out Osage money came in from their head rights. This meant if you married an Osage and they died, you'd get all their money.
There was a house here owned by Bill and Rita Smith, and Rita was an Osage sister of two people who had been murdered. And her husband, Bill, was not Osage, but he had started figuring out something was afoot. Bill and Rita Smith's house was blown up with nitroglycerin. It was an era of people just being really frightened of their neighbors, their friends. They should have been frightened of their spouses.
Killers of the Flower Moon author David Grann told us back in 2021 he started writing this book when he realized not many people knew about the gruesome history of what happened to the Osage Nation, including himself.
I realized I didn't know anything about this, and that even when I was in Oklahoma, so many people outside the Osage community didn't know about it. And when I came back to New York, nobody knew about it.
He said he set off on a mission to make sure as many people as possible knew about the murders of Osage Indians. We told you he even released a young adult version of the novel to make the history accessible and appropriate for kids. The new version included a glossary so young readers could fully understand what happened. Grann told us Martin Scorsese's movie just extended his mission to get this history out there.
I'm not naive. I like to think that only anyone will read a book, but I do know that a movie starring Lily Gladstone and Leonardo DiCaprio will reach a lot more people than I can.
Jim Gray served as Osage chief from 2002 to 2010. He was the youngest chief in the history of the Osage Nation, and he's the great-grandson of Henry Roan, who was murdered during the Reign of Terror. I sat down with Gray and we talked about the importance of Killers of the Flower Moon and the way the story is being told.
You are a direct descendant of someone who was murdered in the Reign of Terror, someone who is depicted in the film.
That's right.
What did you learn from your family about his story through the years, and how does it feel to finally have that story being told to a broad audience?
Well, my mom is Henry Roan's granddaughter. She was born in 1925, 2 years after he was murdered. She grew up hearing stories her whole life about that period of time, but a lot of it she kept to herself, like many Osages did. They just didn't want to talk about it, and especially that generation that was born in that era. She reminded me that I was named after him. You know, my middle name is Roan, and my first name is James, and that's after her little brother who died as an infant. That period of time changed her life, changed the direction her life was going to go. Whatever it was going to be radically altered because of those events. To think about the story being told today for an international audience around the world, it's a mixed blessing. I don't want people to focus just on the violence and the exploitation that took place. but it did happen. And I feel committed to trying to educate the public while I have this small platform of attention at the moment, at least our tribe does, to be able to say that was then, but we are different now. We were victims then, but we don't live like victims today.
When you heard that Martin Scorsese was attached to this project, what were your thoughts?
Well, I was impressed that somebody of his stature took an interest in this story. I was nervous because a lot of his movies are extremely violent, and both things are true. And it took a while for us to kind of accept that, and we did. And we found that despite that reputation for making a lot of violent films, he's an extremely intelligent, kind, empathetic man who demonstrated through the process of making this film a real love for Osage people and a commitment from him that went beyond anyone's expectation to want to get it right.
This story changed over time. They wanted to make sure that they told the story the right way, so they consulted with the Osage. There were lots of discussions about how to approach this. What were those discussions like, and is the finished product something that the Osage can be happy with and proud of?
A local lawyer who's Osage in Oto hosted a meeting of the Gray Horse people, and the Gray Horse people are largely based in Fairfax, Oklahoma, which is where the murders took place. Now, that didn't mean that I was where all the murders took place. It was just the ones that were depicted in the book and in the movie. And a large group of Osages showed up, and we started talking. Has anybody been consulted by the company about making this film? And everyone said no. The community asked Wilson to write a letter on their behalf asking for a meeting with Scorsese, which he did. And to Scorsese's credit, the letter got to him, and he responded, and he says yes. He listened. I was fortunate enough to say a few words myself. I told him that the biggest blockbusters in your industry with Native American themes were all works of fiction. Last of the Mohicans, Dances with Wolves, Little Big Man, all these stories were written by non-Indians, and they were fiction. And they all required a kind of a white savior character. And the Indians were kind of in the background of their own story. And you don't have those elements here. You don't have to make that film. That moment struck a chord with him, I think. I think myself and other people who spoke up about the strength of Osage women in the community is not in the FBI files. He took the mic and told everybody that he heard us. He's going to delay production to see if he can make some significant changes to the script. And he didn't want to start filming this movie until he got the script where it needed to be.
Scorsese would pause production for a couple of months so he and his team could rework the script. The result of that is what you'll see on the big screen when you watch the film. Rolling out the red carpet, I'll give you a look at who went to the Los Angeles premiere of Killers of the Flower Moon.
I'm very happy that this story is getting told, because a lot of times Native history is not told.
Representing Indigenous women on the big screen, I talked with actress Cara Jade Myers about what it was like portraying a central figure in Killers of the Flower Moon.
It's not a whodunit, it's who didn't do it.
I ought to kill these white men who killed my family.
Welcome back to History on the Big Screen, the making of Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm Ron Terrell inside Circle Cinema. Anna Brown was one of the central figures in Killers of the Flower Moon. Her death was the first officially recognized murder during the Reign of Terror. I spoke with Cara Jade Myers, the actress who plays Anna, just hours before the SAG-AFTRA strike began. I asked her to take us back to when she first learned she had earned the role.
I was a complete mess, because at the time, the manager I had at the time, he was like, oh, let's do a Zoom call. I want to talk some business stuff with you. I'm like, sure. And I was like, please say that I got cast in this. And so we get on the Zoom, and he's like, oh, I just wanted to say, he pushes a button, and the casting directors that I was working with popped up, and he says, congratulations. I just start sobbing, literally just sobbing. And they're talking. I have no idea what they're saying. I'm just like, and sobbing. But I was extremely, extremely, extremely grateful for this opportunity.
You play Anna Brown in Killers of the Flower Moon. How would you describe your character?
I describe her kind of as a wild card, but the wild cardness of her doesn't come from her just wanting to have fun. And I wanted it to come from a place of course she wants to have fun, but maybe she takes it too far with the alcoholism, because I'm very sensitive to that stereotype in Native, I guess, film and media, that a lot of Natives are alcoholics. And so, especially like because my family, I've had a few uncles die from alcoholism, as well as, you know, experienced it firsthand with my father. So I really wanted the alcoholism to root from the pain of losing her sister. The fact that her family meant everything to her, and losing her best friend, Minnie, it devastated her. And so I asked Scorsese before we even started filming, I want this alcoholism to come from the pain of losing Minnie. So can we have Hale hand her a flask at the funeral? And he loved the idea. And that was the first scene that we shot. So the very first scene that I shot was with De Niro and DiCaprio. And I'm just sitting there like, how am I here right now? Just watching Scorsese and them talk about the scene. And I'm just like, and then they're like, you have to act. I'm like, oh yeah.
Martin Scorsese is obviously a legend. What was it like working with him on this film, which is perhaps the most important film he's ever directed? Of all the movies that he's done, all the incredible, iconic films he's done, this may be the most important.
Yeah, it's definitely amazing. It's one of those things where, like, you know, it's Scorsese, the legend. And so, you know, you have when you're first, you're like, oh my God, I hope I can live up to his standards kind of thing. But then once you meet him, he is the most kind and incredible and collaborative person. And I remember asking him at the beginning, I was like, so how do you want us to kind of play this? And he looks at me, he's like, you're the actor, figure it out. And I was like, okay. And I don't know why, but just that advice, I was like, I'm on it.
And of course, the cast, you mentioned Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. Describe what it was like working with people at the top of their craft, and now you're a part of that group being in this film.
It's honestly a little surreal, you know. I had the time to myself to be like, this is amazing. I'm working with these legends. This is insane. How am I here? But then when you get on set, luckily everyone is so incredibly kind, incredibly collaborative, and so down to earth that when you get there and you meet them, you're like, oh, okay, they're just other actors. It's fine. And so it was honestly awesome.
In May, you were in France for the Cannes Film Festival. The audience reaction to the film obviously was off the charts. That had to be an incredible feeling. It
was. I was just, me and Jill were just crying. Like everyone's clapping and we're just crying. And it was surreal because that was also the first time that I got to watch the film. So it's such an emotional piece, and you know that like you put everything you could into that character and into that movie, and it's just to see it on screen and see how it plays out and to hear the audience reaction to these horrific things that are happening. It's very, I don't know if gratifying is the right word, but it's important because they're getting the point that this is a very traumatic thing.
Are a citizen of the Wichita tribe, and from an Indigenous woman's perspective, this film, the importance of it, how important is it for people to see this film and hear this story?
It's so important because it's something that's not taught in school. Like I never learned this growing up in school. You learn it from other natives telling the story. And one of the sad realities is the fact that even though this is an extremely unique story, it's not a singular story when it comes to how natives were treated as far as MMIW, genocide, just, you know, different like alcoholism, the things that were stripped from us, our culture, our community. That kind of, it all ties in. And so I'm very happy that this story is getting told, because a lot of times Native history is not told. Like, you know, what happens is the Mayflower lands, and then we have Thanksgiving, and then the Trail of Tears, and then that's all of the history that's taught of us.
Congrats on all the success and future success, and really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Caro was here for more than 5 months working on the film. I also learned her family was originally from Anadarko and Lawton, and she actually spent some time in Owasso while growing up. A peek at all the excitement. I'll show you what it was like at the Los Angeles premiere of Killers of the Flower Moon.
You ready? They're ready for you.
Hollywood in Green Country, a look at the work that went into making Killers of the Flower Moon as authentic as possible.
We were talking to the community, trying to hear the real stories and trying to incorporate the truth as best we possibly could. And no matter what people feel about the film, I know we all did that work and we tried our very best to pay respects to the real stories.
Osage are the finest, wealthiest, and most beautiful people on God's earth. They outsmarted everybody. They have the say who gets the oil.
Thanks for joining us again for History on the Big Screen, the making of Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm Ron Terrell back in Pawhuska. We're looking into all the work it took to put together Martin Scorsese's latest film. On top of telling the story of the murders of Osage citizens, one of the goals of this film was to be as authentic as possible, which is why crews went to great lengths to transform parts of Osage County. Crews rebuilt this old Nazarene church to look like a Catholic church in Fairfax from the 1920s. Empty buildings were transformed into famous businesses and shops from the era. Streetlights were replaced with telephone poles, and a replica of the Fairfax train station, complete with a steam locomotive, were built, all to make Osage County look like it did back in its heyday. Casting also hired Osage tribal citizens for speaking roles or as extras.
You ready? They're ready for you.
We showed you in 2019 when hundreds of Osage citizens lined up outside the county fairgrounds for a casting call.
Just winging it, but if they gave me the main role, you know.
Mason Cunningham was one of many waiting in line for hours. He hopes people will view the Osage in a positive light when they see the movie.
People forget about us and tend to forget that we're still here and that we're still just regular people.
Amelia Jake and her 2 kids were hopeful for roles in a story she says isn't an easy one to tell.
More people would know how we feel about it.
Cast and crew weren't the only people flocking to Osage County.
It's amazing that it can look like 1920s.
Curious spectators like Janelle Leonard came to Green Country to try to get a glimpse at A-list stars like Leonardo DiCaprio, Brendan Fraser, and Robert De Niro. Pawhuska residents told us filming Killers of the Flower Moon was exactly what the city needed.
They're cleaning all the buildings, they're redoing all the buildings, and so even when the movie's over, Pawhuska's going to be left with a facelift.
A night of glitz and glam. I'll take you inside the Los Angeles red carpet premiere of Killers of the Flower Moon.
It's a huge economic impact for Northeast Oklahoma.
Millions of dollars brought into Oklahoma. The economic impact the filming of Killers of the Flower Moon had in Osage County and beyond.
We're speaking of the 1920s Osage community. We're talking about Black Wall Street in Tulsa. We're talking about a lot in our film, and why the hell does the world not know about these things?
Expecting a miracle to make all this go away. You know they don't happen anymore.
Welcome back to History on the Big Screen, the making of Killers of the Flower Moon. We've been in Pawhuska, we've been at Circle Cinema. Now we are on the red carpet in Hollywood, where just a few moments ago, I had the chance to speak with Martin Scorsese.
First, I'd like them to feel that they've been immersed in a world that reflects who we are and the world we are today. It does reflect that. And I mean, things, each generation, you got to teach anew them, everything. And I really hope that by experiencing the film, that's why the length of the film is that way, and putting yourself into these characters, by experiencing it stays with you. It stays with you maybe some years later. They say, that reminds me of so-and-so in the film, and I feel in the same way, and I don't know, is this right, is this wrong? Some basis in morality, that's all.
From beginning to end, what was the experience like making this film in Oklahoma with the Osage?
Well, I'd say one of the greatest experiences of my life, I can tell you that. When I visited, I knew I had to visit Oklahoma and meet with the Osage. And once I got there, I realized it's the only place to shoot it was Oklahoma. And by the way, the old joke is, I'm very urban. I remember Fran Lebowitz, when I told her I was shooting a movie in Taiwan and it was in a forest. She says, Marty, a forest? I said, yes. She said, did it have more than one tree? And so I said, yeah, I think it did. So you can imagine, I get to Oklahoma and it's open. Prairies, wild horses, I mean, everything I ever dreamed of, in a way. And I just fell in love with it, and I felt that that's where we had to shoot it.
Also part of the evening's festivities, Osage singers performing on the red carpet. We spoke with Osage princesses Lulu Goodfox and Gigi Siki, who said they could never have imagined being part of a production like this.
Hawe dahe pashe, doape, jaje abria. Hello everyone, my name is Gigi Siki and I am the previous reigning Osage Nation princess. During the entirety of the film, I was the Osage Nation princess, and so I got to attend the first day of filming, which was very special. We did a prayer, and then I also got to perform the Lord's Prayer in Indian Sign Language. And then I was still the princess during the last day of filming, and we're in the last scene of the movie. I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but there are many of us in it, and I got to be part of that, and it was so magical seeing all of my people in one area and knowing that it's going on the big screen.
It's awesome, especially because they're going to see that we're still here, so we're still doing the same things we were doing 100 years ago when this happened. So it's crazy to know that people didn't grow up knowing this. So I'm happy that everybody gets to know our story.
Could you ever dreamed you'd be walking the red carpet?
No, this is crazy.
From the red carpet in Hollywood to right back here in Oklahoma, we showed you the mark this film has made on Osage County, but its impact can be felt far beyond Pawhuska and Fairfax. I talked with Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell about how this movie has helped boost the state's economy.
How much money did we actually see come into the state because of this production back in 2021?
Yeah, just in the Osage County and the Pawhuska area, over $40 million economic impact in just those few short months. And that doesn't include, you know, the days that we shot in the Tulsa area. So that is a great economic impact in a very short time period. And frankly, during some really tough days as well during COVID.
Countless numbers of crew members, actors, background that got to participate in the film as well from right here in Green Country.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, we talked about it's show business, but the business part I don't think is talked about enough. And thousands of people in front of the cameras and behind the cameras. Everything from dry cleaning services to the caterers, every hotel being full during that time. So it's a huge economic impact for Northeast Oklahoma.
Obviously, Killers of the Flower Moon is giving movie theaters a big boost. Circle Cinema sold out several screenings around the opening. We spoke with Ryan Thomas, the communications manager here at the Circle. He says people are so interested in this film because of its authenticity.
It helps that it's a locally made film, you know, made here in Oklahoma, but I think a big part of it is that it's the story being told right. It's being done with respect, with the Osage Nation directly involved in the production. You know, Martin Scorsese wanted to make sure this was the story as it happened and really respectful to that. 2023 was Circle Cinema's most successful year, and Killers of the Flower Moon is the cherry on top. On a personal note, I actually had the opportunity to work on this film. I got the chance to be a stand-in for Brendan Fraser for one day. I didn't want to take out my phone and start snapping a bunch of pictures out of respect for the production, but I did get a couple. Met a lot of wonderful, hardworking people, and it was a surreal experience that I will never forget. Thank you so much for watching History on the Big Screen, the making of Killers of the Flower Moon. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how this film is not only impacting Oklahoma, but the Osage tribe, because it's allowing their story that many thought would be forgotten to finally be told. I'm Ron Terrell, and I'll see you in the theater.